Hi guys, and welcome to Claire's Clues. On today's video, we'll be talking about the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. See, when Robert Kiyosaki was just a young boy, he had a rich dad and a poor dad. His rich dad, leaving school in grade 8, still became the richest man in Hawaii, while his poor dad, even though graduating with a PhD, still struggled his whole life financially. And when these two men passed away, his rich dad had left behind millions of dollars for his family, while when his poor dad passed away, he'd left behind nothing but bills and debt to be pieced back together. So the only difference between these two men is something called financial education. Now, financial education isn't being taught in schools, so that leaves us one place of where to learn it from, and that being our parents. But if our parents aren't in the top 1% of the rich and the wealthy, then they can only teach us how to be poor and broke. Now, if we want to avoid the latter, here's some things we can do. We can understand the difference between assets and liabilities, and we can have a positive mental attitude. So, let's talk about assets and liabilities. For starters, an asset is something that will bring in income, that requires very little time and energy, while as a liability is something that will take your time, energy, and money. Now, we always want to focus on having an asset, because if you've got a liability, it will only drain you in all forms of ways. Now, to put this in perspective, poor people have liabilities. They buy into them, unknowingly or knowingly, while the rich have assets. And they focus all their energy on making sure that everything they have is an asset and that it's not taking away from their income, their time, their energy, their lifestyle that they created. So, poor people buy assets. Poor people buy liabilities. Rich people buy assets. And the middle class buy liabilities thinking that they're assets. Now, we are all, in the same boat when it comes to thinking we've made the right decision sometimes. But later on down the track, we see that maybe we haven't. And we can't go back, we can only go forward. This is where a positive mental attitude comes into play. If you have a positive mental attitude and the outcome or the outlook on things, then you'll be able to move forward and keep taking that next step to get you further towards your goals. So, to give you an understanding of liabilities, for poor people, it doesn't matter how much money they make. They will always match their income with their liabilities. So, let's say, for example, a poor person, they buy the newest, greatest Apple iPhone, and they think it's the best thing they could have done. It makes phone calls, they can stay in touch with their family. If they go overseas, they can still make contact. This thing enables them to have entertainment, all kinds of reasons, whatever they may be. So they will justify this as an asset. But the thing is, at the end of the day, they still have to pay a phone bill every month to have this asset. Which really, at the end of the day, if it's not paying you, it can be a liability. So another example would be if you owned a home and this house at the end of the month brings in $1,000. That's an asset. But if at the end of the month you're losing $1,000, that's what we would call a liability. Now, they can be one and the same sometimes, just depending on your personal attitude towards it and the research you put in. Let me give you an example of what real assets are and could be. Things like business, stocks, bonds, and even real estate. And if you invest in the right assets for long enough, you might never have to work a 9-to-5 job ever again. Wouldn't that be fantastic? See, it's not how much you make, but instead how much you get to keep. That tangible feeling of, this is mine. Instead of having to part ways with what you have earned and maybe palm it off to the bank or to a lender, whatever it might be, you get to hold on to that. It's your decision what you get to do with it. So let's move on. If you want to, let's say, work from the assets quadrant, you could look at paying very little tax on things. Now, to give you a bit of a story, I have a really good friend of mine who would give up her heart and soul to be a neurosurgeon. She spent such a long time looking into what it would take, the time, the energy, the money, the effort. She was so committed to wanting to help people, and this was the best way she knew how. But she also needed to help herself and her family as well. So this is what she decided on. She'd set her goals on it, and she was so willing to give up everything she had, change her life, and move into a whole new world of becoming a neurosurgeon. But a little down the track, she did a bit of more research, and she'd found out that at the end of the day, if she was to do this and become a fully fledged neurosurgeon, her tax would be immense. She would lose 50% to the government, and then she'd be taxed yet again. If she saves, if she spends, when she earns, and even if she's dying. Now, this made her pretty dull. She was really upset, extremely heartbroken. Her goals, her dream, she had to give up. And obviously she didn't want to. She would give up her heart and soul to help people. And yes, there were 100 other ways that she could do this. But to her, this was the best way she could do it that brought satisfaction. To her, her family, knowing that she was achieving something that she could do, and to all her friends who knew that she could do better, do more for herself. But unfortunately, when she did look at the reality of it, the tax on it was a joke. She couldn't afford to give up her life and soul to put all these hours in every day, day in, day out, for the rest of her life. 10 years of training would go by before she was even qualified. If she was qualified, she would lose more than she was to gain, which is so heartbreaking for her because she wanted nothing more than to help others, herself, her family. She just wanted to do the right thing. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, some of us aren't able to make those decisions. Some of us do end up with a 9-to-5 job, and we get taxed and we lose out, we put more energy in, we lose our time with our friends and our families, but we don't get much out of it. You get an average, maybe you're a casual, so you get a casual pay slip. Or maybe you're on salary. You have a set amount of hours you must do to receive a pay that no matter what you'll get, but it'll only just be enough. Now, you could change this with a personal attitude towards things, a positive mental attitude. If you had a PMA, you could move towards things that were really set into the stars. Things that are your dreams, your goals, your passions. All you've got to do is have the right attitude. Now, moving forward, I wanted to talk about things that would benefit you in some way. Things like what it would mean to not have to pay such a ridiculous amount of tax. See, if you owned a company, first of all, let me start with this. When you think of a company, most people, 9 out of 10 let's say, would probably think of a building or an apartment space or an office. But in actual fact, a business can be something as simple as a folder with some paper inside. And that folder will enable the rich, those that have invested in the positive assets, to make a living and then have all their expenses and buy all the things they want. And at the end of it, pay very little tax. Doesn't that sound amazing? Far better than the tax that you're paying for someone else. Your tax goes towards all kinds of things, good and bad. But that's not our choice. But if you were to move into the assets quadrant, you would have more of a choice of what it would mean to have control of your life, of what it would mean to have control of the lifestyle you had and that the dreams you wanted to live. Say you wanted to be on a yacht, you could do that. All with the right attitude, goals, and a plan. That's all it takes. And I know you might have heard it all before, but it's simple. Now, I'm here to help you with your goals. Sorry, guys. I will summarize this really quickly. We did talk about assets and liabilities. So assets being an income that doesn't take away your time, energy, anything like that. And liabilities, things that do exactly that. Things that will take away from your time, your energy, your effort, the life you are wanting to live but just can't because you're tied down by a 9-to-5 job, or you've got commitments but your schedule is full, whatever it might be. And to cover the positive mental attitude, it's just about getting out of bed in the morning, taking that first step. If that's where you need to start, then that's where you start, at the very beginning. Because it all starts with the very first step. Now, we'll be making a lot more of these videos for our training and your personal development goals. But that's all for now, guys. Until next time, leave a comment below on what you like the most, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Claire's Clues.